In this tutorial, we're going to learn how to create a 3D opener animation with Cinema 4D. Now, before we get started, I'm very excited to announce that we've released a demo with 10 models from Hybrid Model Pack available on voxsite.com. We're going to be using some of these models to quickly set up a huge detailed scene and then walk you through some camera animation workflows and then finally use Redshift to render our scene. You don't specifically need Redshift, you can follow along with any renderer you're using. We're not going to go too in depth with rendering, so we're not going to do something exclusively available for Redshift only, so you can probably adapt to any type of render workflow you have. So here I am inside Cinema 4D, and these are the 10 models available in the demo. These models are completely free to use. All you have to do is follow the link in the description of the video and download the project. And once you have the lib4d file installed, you can follow along with me if you want. So the first thing I'm going to use is the square tile object. Double click to add it to our scene. Let's place this inside a cloner. So I'm holding Alt and then I'm selecting cloner, and this will place it inside the cloner. Let's set the cloner mode to grid array, and let's spread out the clones. We only need one clone on the y-axis, set this to 1. Let's make sure these are spread nicely. Let's press T for scale and just scale this up. Maybe drag this down a bit. Let's go back to our content browser, and my next object that I want to use is platform_6. Alright, so all of these are from the full pack, which contains over 50 of these objects. These 10 models are free to use, of course, and this is looking fine. Let's go back to objects here and cloner. Alright, and this will be my floor. Just rename this. Press T for opacity and just scale this up maybe. And let's make sure these are not intersecting. So that's looking good. Let's go back here and set the mode here to per step and increase the tiles. So maybe 6, and maybe just increase this. It's looking fine for now. For our next object, I'm actually gonna use a cube. And I'll drag this to the side here and press T for opacity. Let's scale this guy up. Maybe not this big, and you're gonna understand what I'm doing with this cube in just a second. Let's go to our properties here and press NB to show our lines, and let's increase the segments to maybe 3 by 3 by 3. Alright, so that's looking good. Let's go back to our content browser and let's drop a box, and let's go back to our objects here. Alright, so this is the box. Let's drop this inside another cloner. Let's set the mode to object, and for the object I'm going to use this cube. And for my options here, let's turn off align clones, and let's grab this box inside the cloner, press T for scale and just drag out this box. And also for my cloner, you can see the scene is starting to slow down, so let's set these to render instances. Alright, so this will work much faster. Press T for scale, just scale these up until they sort of stack properly on top of each other. Don't worry about the artifacts here. When you render this, they won't show. So this is mainly the idea with how we're going to create these stacked boxes. So we're going to be using an object to define where the clones are, and in this case it's a cube. And let's go ahead and just disable the cloner for now. I'll make this cube editable by pressing C, and let's go back to our line mode, which is NB, and basically just copy this cube in each corner and try to fill out the sides of this floor. So I'll hold down Control and duplicate the cube, Let's move this over here and actually just hold down Control and move over another cube. Hold down Control. Alright, hold down Control. Just sort of fill up the sides. And maybe something like this. And over here in the center, let's actually just add another one here and here. It's better to have more than you need in case you need to add more. This works. This should work just fine. And let's grab all of these cubes now. And so I grab them by using Shift, Control click, and connect objects and delete. So now we have just one object. We missed a couple of cubes here. So grab all of the cubes, right click, connect objects. Now if we go back to our cloner and drop the cube again and turn on the cloner, now you can see that we have a lot of boxes, and this is not necessarily what we're looking for. Let's turn this back off. And you can see that this cloner is using as distribution method the vertices. So how many vertices you have in your cube, that's how many clones you're gonna get. And basically if I grab this cube now, this cube object, and go to point mode, and press space to select my live selection tool, I can then now start grabbing some vertices here, just randomly select a few, alright, and press delete. And you can see that you have to go to right click and optimize to get rid of the vertices entirely, and just select maybe a few more and just keep on selecting vertices here and just create a nice random sort of like an odd shape, and optimize. Let's maybe select some over on this side as well. So we don't really need as many cube clones as we previously had. So hopefully you can kind of get where I'm going with this method. Maybe drop some here from the top as well. Right click, optimize. So now when we turn back our cloner, alright, still a lot of clones, so I'm gonna fast forward the video and just take care of some of these vertices. So we end up looking with something like this, and this is fine for now. One other thing I want to do here is I want each clone to have a random rotation that's multiplied by 90 degrees. So each side from each cube will be facing a different direction, and just create some nice randomness with that. With the cloner selected, I will go to MoGraph and use effector and use a formula effector. And let's turn off position and scale, turn on rotation, and set all of these settings to 90 degrees. So basically I want these values here to be multiplied by a random number between 0 and 4, right? So 4 multiplied by 90 is 360, and this will offset each rotation individually. To do this, we can go to effector, and the formula here will be R and D, and in between parentheses we'll type 4. So this will give us a random number between 1 and 4, which will be multiplied by 90. Of course, a random number can mean something like 1.2, and we want fixed numbers, so we can type in round and place the R and D in between parentheses. Alright, so now this will give me a fixed value between 1 and 4, so it's going to be either 1, 2, 3, and 4. It's not going to be anything like 2.6 or numbers like that. So now if I press enter, alright, each side will be facing a different 90 degrees rotation. And if I go to parameter here, and I can even use different values here, and you can see how each side flips 90 degrees, or type in 0, or 270, So just find some nice values that work for you and we can move forward with the next part. And let's go back to our content browser, and I'm also gonna drop a wall tile underscore 2. Let's drag this over, and I just wanna use this piece to sort of fill up the gaps between the boxes here. And with this wall tile selected, I'm gonna go and let's add a instance object. Alright, so that's with the wall tile selected, and this creates an instance of the wall. So whatever changes we're gonna do to the wall will be reflected on the instance objects. So we're gonna use this method instead of simply duplicating the wall object. Let's move this to the side, and let's just sort of fill in the gaps between the boxes. I'm also going to grab all these wall objects and Alt G to group them, and we'll name this walls. We can actually hide the walls for now. Let's go to our content browser. We're going to be adding tunnel. Let's drag this over. The size should be fine as it is. So all the models are more or less scaled to work with each other without you having to come in and modify the scale. But if you want to make this bigger, you can. And actually, I will make this bigger. And let's move this over. We're gonna place this inside a cloner. Let's increase the Z offset. I think maybe 4 clones should do. So this is where the camera will start and travel this tunnel to our main scene. Let's maybe drag this over right until it's sort of on the edge with the floor. And if I unhide the walls, maybe I can adjust the walls as well. Just make sure there's no really any gaps. I can also maybe add another wall on top here. And this might look a little messy, like seeing the scene like this, but the final result is all that matters. And usually in all of my projects there's a lot of mess behind the camera that isn't seen, but that's just the nature of the business. Although since we're using the same models from the same pack, the design being consistent, you can see that it really creates a seamless effect and all of the objects really merge well together to create the final look. Finally, we need a door. So let's drop a door here. This will be door underscore 1. So this is the object, and let's move this so it matches with our tunnel, and maybe increase the scale here as well. And maybe let's grab the door and the cloner and just drag this over here so it's a little bit more clean. And let's take a look from the inside of the tunnel, and let's go to our door and maybe drag this up, make sure everything is lined up. And you can see that we can really easily create an animation, a door opening animation with our pre-made controls here, and maybe this needs to be a little bit more below. Alright, and also speaking of animations, let's go to our platform 6 here, and this also has some pre-made custom elements, so we can have the opening, and then we can raise the platform from inside. Speaking of which, let's add an object on top of this platform, And I'm just going to simply add a text. Let's take a look at the text here. Let's type in X, and let's make this an extruded object. Alright, and press S for scale and place this in position right on top of our platform here. And if I want the animation to follow this platform, I will simply drag this object inside the center from the platform 6 object, right? So place this inside the center, and now when I raise, this raises with the X as well. Now obviously this is intersecting our floor here, and this could be fixed by simply having the floor avoid this platform, but our camera will probably not be at an angle to even see the intersection as well. So if our camera is something like this, then we'll just see the X rising, and we're gonna avoid the intersection altogether with our camera. Let's maybe make this X a little larger. Alright, so we're gonna animate this opening, and then we're gonna animate the X rising. So I think this is a good place to start animating our camera. The first thing we will need is a spline that goes through the tunnel up until our platform. So let's go in our top view. Let's grab our pen tool, and I'll press click and another click over here. And if I select this spline now and press center to axis, and actually if you let's make sure that we are in the object mode, and then we can center to axis, alright, and drag it over to the side. To make this spline completely flat, you can press T for scale, and then on our x-axis we can hold down shift and just scale this until it reaches 0%. And let's make sure that all of these coordinates are 0 for now. Let's go in our viewport, in our perspective view, drag this over, and let's place this spline roughly into position. And let's make sure that this is in the center of our, which one is my front view. Alright, so you can kind of see the tunnel here, so that's NB, or NA rather. Just make sure that this is nicely aligned in the center of our tunnel. The next step here will be to add a circle spline, and let's drag this above. Let's set the plane to XZ and press S for scale, or rather T for scale, sorry, and just make this circle larger. Then let's drop a target camera. Let's right click the camera, add a align to spline tag, and use the circle for our align to spline, and grab our camera target and just drag this up, just so it roughly matches the height of the circle spline. I will also add a new null object and drag this over roughly in the same position as well. So that's looking alright. This will be my camera base. And now I will grab the circle spline, camera target, and camera object and drag them inside the camera base. So now this controls all of this. And this is more or less how I rig pretty much all my cameras. Now I can right click this camera base object and select align to spline, and then drag the spline that we've created earlier that goes from through the tunnel inside the scene. Let's go to our camera base, and we can rotate the circle 90 degrees. So press R for rotation, rotate this guy 90 degrees so it's facing the tunnel. And then if I select this align to spline tag for our camera base, you can see that we can animate the position alongside this tunnel and into the scene. So let's hop inside the camera now, and let's see which is the first frame, where the first frame will begin. So maybe position 23%. Let's make a keyframe, and let's go forward. Let's stretch the timeline to maybe 150 frames and go forward until maybe frame 120. Go forward until it sort of reaches the platform, and make another keyframe. Alright, so far so good. Now, when the camera reaches outside of the tunnel, we sort of want the camera to rise up, and we can do this by animating the circle object. So grab the circle, go to coordinates, Set a keyframe for the Y position to where it's at currently. Move forward a few frames, and maybe the camera shall be risen by frame 130, and just drag the Y position, and you can see how the camera sort of rises, and it's looking good. Let's also adjust the camera target, so let's drag this forward and roughly in the center of our platform. Let's go back inside the camera now and let's see how this looks. Alright, so maybe the camera should start rising a little sooner. Let's go back to our circle, and I'm actually going to press Shift F3 to bring up my timeline. Inside the circle object here, we can select the position, we can select the Y position. Let's go to our curves, and we can simply drag the curve just so it starts a little earlier, so our camera rises a little earlier. Maybe something like this, and maybe also smooth out the handles a bit, and the inside handles as well. So that's looking pretty good, and we also need the camera to rotate around this object. Let's go to our circle object, let's go to coordinates, and let's see, this is gonna be probably rotation H. And let's actually step outside of the camera. And we can see that there's a weird motion here. We want the camera, we sort of want this circle to be right in the center of our platform. So we need to adjust this align to spline tag. So press Shift F3 again. And this align to spline tag, let's go to position here and to smooth keyframes. And let's just increase the value here until it's sort of, so my circle object now sort of matches the platform. Let's go back inside the camera and see how the adjustments work. Now this is a bit too close. We can go to our circle object and we can also increase the radius here. And let's make a keyframe for the radius at frame 64. And right here at the end, or rather 120, where our camera base stops moving, let's also increase the radius here, just so the camera is now a little further from the platform, and make a keyframe. Let's look at the rotation now. So with our circle selected, go to coordinates and let's go to frame 150 and just turn this around. We can see that the camera target also needs to be readjusted, so step outside the camera and make sure this is right in the center of our platform. Step inside the camera, go to circle, and now we can finally add our rotation keyframe. So this angle should do just fine. Add a keyframe, press Shift F3. So far for my circle rotation H, let's maybe adjust the keyframes a bit as well. Let's maybe make this smoother, and I'm pretty sure this needs to happen a little faster. And also just the smoothing for this as well. So now it steps outside the tunnel, rotates around the platform, and everything looks good. Let's take a look at the whole animation. Now it's probably a little fast, but using the same techniques you can adjust the speed to whatever suits your needs. I also don't want the camera to start from completely still, so let's maybe adjust the keyframes for the align to spline. Let's go to keyframes and just give this, and just remove some of this smoothing here. So now the camera should start right away. Alright, so that's looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and animate the door opening for the tunnel. So maybe at around frame 35 we want the door to open, so select the tunnel, or actually the door, and make a keyframe animation. Let's make a keyframe for 0%. Go forward, and maybe the door will be unlocked by frame 54. Let's play this back. Right, so the door is opening. Let's see for our platform. maybe at around this point in time we want the platform to open. Make a keyframe, and let's open this maybe by frame 130. Alright, maybe increase the length of this animation and also raise our logo. So this is looking pretty good. Let's play it one more final time. Alright, pretty good. So let's step outside the camera now and let's fold all, and we can take care of the rendering now. So I will be using Redshift, but really this method should work with any render engine that you would be using. So I will go ahead and delete all of these placeholder materials, and I will create a new Redshift material, and let's name this base 1. I'll copy this, and the second one will be base 2. Copy this, base 3. Copy this will be dark. Let's copy this again, and this will be lights. So pretty much we're just going to be using 5 different materials. Of course, you have options to use a lot more materials, but for the sake of saving time, we are only going to be using 5 materials. So let's start applying these materials. Let's go to our floor. Let's go to the first object that we started with, so square tile 1. We're going to drag this in the base 1 slot, so this is inside the user data. You are going to have options for materials. So base 1, base 2, base 3, and lights. So just simply drag them and it will be applied to the respective groups. Let's do the same for platform 6. Base 1, 2, 3, and lights. Let's go inside our boxes here. So base 1, 2, 3, and lights. For walls, we only have to change for the original one. So base 1, 2, 3. So some models also have this extra option, or you're gonna have options like grid or sort of stuff like that, and usually it's something that works well with the dark color, so I just make this dark material for that. So just place this inside the extra, and lights. Tunnel 3 is gonna be the same thing. Alright, so for extra I'm gonna use dark and grid. I'm just gonna set this to base 1 and lights as well. Let's go to door. Alright, so extra is gonna be dark actually, and lights. Let's go ahead and add a dome light and place an HDRI. So these 3 HDRIs are free as well and come with the demo models. So let's use the first one, HDRI 1. So this is sort of like a sky object if you're using physical renderer. Let's go inside our camera and let's go to a different frame here, and also let's maybe place the base one on top of the X as well, and I will switch this to my RS layout and press play here so we can render. And I'll make some adjustments here. Let's maybe add some exposure to our HDRI and brighten this up. Alright, so now we can start separating our materials. So let's start with base 1, and I'll increase the color here, make this more white. And let's see, for reflection, use 64 samples and increase the roughness, and maybe add some coating as well, and some slight roughness to the coating. 64 samples. Alright, so already we're bringing back a lot of detail. Let's leave base 2 as it is, or actually let's maybe, yeah, this should be fine. Just increase the roughness. And these are gonna be very basic materials. I'm not going to be spending a lot of time working on materials and adding custom textures and whatnot, because it's not really the point of this video, and we just want something working really fast so we can start rendering. Let's see, base 3, and we're going to make this a little darker. Alright, and maybe less reflective, and also increase the roughness and samples. Dark, pretty much the same thing here. Just make this a nice dark material, sort of like a matte, a black matte material. And finally, for our lights, we can use incandescent material to generate some GI. Alright, and maybe increase the multiplier here. Let's use temperature and just increase the temperature, give this a nice blue tint. And press Ctrl B to go to my render settings, turn this, or rather set this to redshift, and for my GI, let's set this to brute force. So that's looking pretty good, but maybe I don't really want all these lights on the floor, and maybe I don't want lights on the boxes as well, because it really makes the scene a lot more convoluted, and it just messes up the whole design. So we can go to our box and we can simply replace the light material with each of these other materials. So let's maybe go with base 2 for our lights, and that will get rid of the lights here, and also let's get rid of the lights for our square tile. Alright, so that's maybe slightly cleaner. Let's take a look at the tunnels, the tunnel portion. So this is pretty dark because it's only using the GI from the light objects, and we're just going to be simply we're going to be adding a area light to the tunnel. So let's go back to our startup version here, and let's check our tunnel. Let's disable the cloner for now, or rather for the tunnel. Right, so disable the cloner. So this is my tunnel, and we're just going to be adding a area light. Let's place this right in the center of our tunnel. We're gonna switch this to a sphere and just increase the size. And I'm trying to shape this sort of like the shape of the tunnel. But this should be fine, and I'll drop this inside the tunnel cloner, or rather the tunnel object. Alright, and turn back our cloner. And now if I step inside the camera and switch back to my redshift layout, press play, give it a second. Right, so now our tunnel is properly lit. Let's maybe select this area light and decrease the multiplier maybe to 0.7. So I kind of like the more dark look. Let's go in some of these materials and make sure that the coating also has some roughness for these materials. Now obviously these are very basic materials. You can see that I've set them up in like 2 minutes. Obviously with more defined materials, with textures, actual real materials like metals and that have scratches and bumps and all that kind of stuff, this will look much better. But with a really simple setup, you can see that you have a lot of detail just from the models themselves. And with the material setups that these models have, you can change the look, the feel you're going for in like very rapidly. So for example, if I select the base one and let's make this dark. Alright, and base 2, let's give this a nice color. Maybe like a blue. Or actually, let's leave this. And let's grab base 3 here, and let's maybe try to add a little color in the mix. So you can see we get a completely different result very quickly. And you can really easily set up a a large scene with a lot of detail in a very short period of time. And I'm actually gonna go back to the blue here. Let's take a look at the tunnel. Alright, so pretty cool. Let's actually render a frame here. Let's set the samples, make a quick preview. So hope this video helped. Feel free to download these models, mess around with them and create your own scenes. Check out voxsite.com for more tutorials, and I'll see you later.